Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and let the game reviews commence once again. It's been a slow couple of months to open up 2021 when it comes to game releases, but now things are starting to ramp up, and let it all begin with one of my most anticipated titles of 2021, Persona 5 Strikers, which serves as a direct sequel to Persona 5, not Persona 5 Royal, which is my game of the generation. It's kind of a crime that they didn't do anything with Royal afterwards, but hopefully DLC expansion, stuff like that is coming. But anyway, it's no secret here on this channel, I'm a diehard Persona fan. If you listen to the background of like 70% of my videos, you'll hear some type of Persona track. I adore this franchise through and through. As a turn-based RPG, it is easily my favorite franchise to date. I just love it so much, so do keep that in mind with this review. But I'm here to say that even if Persona 5 wasn't your jam, Strikers very well may be. It could be the game that pulls you into the franchise, because it takes a lot of those formulas that we've seen in turn-based RPGs and translates them into action. Plus, with some great social commentary and an interesting story, Persona 5 Strikers is exactly what I was hoping for. Now, that does not mean it is flawless, okay? There are some issues I have with this game. I will be getting into them, but let's get it all started as per usual with the story. So like I said, this is a direct sequel to Persona 5, which came out in 2017. The Phantom Thieves are reuniting over their summer vacation, and they end up getting wrapped up into a road trip spanning across multiple areas in Japan. So you're not going to be experiencing Joker's daily life, kind of like you do in most recent Persona games like 3, 4, and 5, where you're going to go to school, you're going to hang out with friends. This is kind of more of a linear guided adventure where you'll have certain hub areas to explore, like Okinawa or Tokyo and so on and so forth. So you're going to see new locations that you can go to, but they're going to be more confined hub spaces, whereas in previous Persona games, you'd be living out the life of your protagonist. Now, the reason that everyone's teaming up again to go across Japan is because people's hearts are changing yet again, and the group, the Phantom Thieves, is being blamed. Now, I will say early on in this story, they lean very heavily into a lot of pillars that were established by Persona 5. And there are some character development moments throughout the game that, if you're not familiar with what transpired with their arcs in 5, you may be a little bit lost. I don't think so lost that you can't play the game, but it's something worth knowing. More notably, for those of you who are experienced like me with Persona, yeah, I gotta say that I felt like the early goings to this adventure, number one, weren't paced that well, and number two, were extremely familiar, which got me worried. Fortunately, after about 6 hours, it really does take a life of its own, and it becomes its own thing, but it really leans heavily into Persona 5. So if you're okay with that, and I don't mean like into its past and stuff, but they're constantly drawing correlations to everything that happened in 5, and to me, I just felt like it was not its own separate thing for long enough. So that was an issue in the early going. But anyway, you're going across Japan and you're joined by Zenkichi, who is a cop. Hey, remember Ryder from Mass Effect Andromeda? Yeah, that's Zenkichi. And I mean, I bet that Tom Taylorson is a little bit hyped to be out of that role of Ryder and doing something significant here with Persona. He did a phenomenal job with Zenkichi, this kind of awkward, quirky cop with a really interesting backstory. Obviously, if you played Persona 5 and you know the Phantom Thieves' relationship with the police, it kind of brings this interesting element into Strikers, where now they have to work with a undercover cop, and there's this built-in distrust, but they kind of grow to like each other in a way, and you're learning more about each other, and so different motivations are revealed, of course, and that becomes a real major core of this story. But that's not to say that there aren't other interesting characters outside of Zenkichi, because of course there is also Sophia, or as they call her, Sophie, which you discover in the early going of the game, and both these characters together slot in perfectly with the Phantom Thieves. We've seen multiple Persona spin-offs, such as Arena Ultimax, where they bring all of these characters together and they bring in Labrys, and there are certain characters that are added in, like in Persona 4 Dancing All Night, and so on and so forth. But I think when it comes to actual spin-offs, Persona 5 Strikers does it the best with its brand new characters. They develop them well, they have their own motivations, their own reasoning for being the story. They're not just jammed in there for, hey, new character. There's an actual reason for them being there, and I gotta say, I really liked what they did with especially Sophie. She is super interesting, she's got a great backstory, she makes so much sense, and she fits so well into the Phantom Thieves. I really liked her, and that's kind of the best part is as the group got bigger, I was thinking to myself, how are they all going to mesh? But they find a way to do so, even if some of their ideologies collide. So I really appreciated the character development in Strikers. They did a great job with it. Pretty much everywhere except Futaba. I have a personal complaint about her. I thought that 5, they did a really good job with Futaba. She was one of the most interesting characters, and every spin-off since Futaba's just been that kind of generic, hey gamers, type of character where she makes like little pop culture references and goes like, level up, and just whoever's writing Futaba now just needs to stop.
Stop it. Get some help.
I'm sorry, like they are tarnishing this character as far as I'm concerned, and I think all development halted as soon as 5 ended. Like any spin-off afterwards has just been wholly uninteresting with Futaba. So throughout this story, you're going to explore what are called jails. These are places that trap the desires of the masses, and in order to get rid of these jails, you'll have to remove the monarch of said jail from their ruling and attempt to uncover who is behind these large changes in society. So that's kind of the general premise of it all, but Persona is known for its social commentary, talking on the likes of social media, politics, and much more. And for this game, I found the social commentary to be quite relatable, quite understandable, and great for the modern audience. So there is something kind of insightful buried into this story, and it's not just throwaway, which I also found very nice to discover. I thought it was going to be a standard Persona adventure, and that would be really it, but they did a good job with it. They really put some meaning behind it. They put some great character development into it, and I appreciated it, man. I mean, through and through, it continuously surprised me. Additionally, there will be moments where you investigate your new surroundings to learn more about your targets. So as you interview different people throughout your hub area, you can become familiar with different shops and different people in the location. There are also requests, just like in P5 and P5R, but they don't add much in the terms of story, and most notably is the lacking of social elements. Now, I've seen this line of defense come up across the Persona community that because you're close friends with everyone in P5 already, you know, you've technically maxed out your social links, there's no need for a social system in P5 Strikers. I don't really understand that, and I honestly think that's overly defensive of people to say. Like, I have best friends in real life, and I don't stop getting close to them because I'm already close with them. So I think that's kind of a lazy excuse. I gotta say that I think the game would have been better if they had social elements. It's one of the key standout things with Persona. They do have bonding elements, which we'll talk about in our gameplay section, but yeah, you can't develop your relationships any further than such as how you could in previous Persona games. I will say, I don't know how it would have worked with the way the story is structured, and I think it was a good call just to say, let's not do this. But yeah, I don't think the excuse that, hey, you're already friends with them works. That doesn't make sense to me. So with that, let's get into gameplay. Now, if you didn't know this, fun fact, Persona 5 was actually supposed to be an action game, so a lot of what Persona 5 Strikers feels like is actualizing that original vision of Persona 5. For those who don't know, this is developed by Omega Force, and they're usually behind Musou games, you know, those Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, the beat-em-up games where you do thousands of KOs. They're a guilty pleasure of mine. I really enjoy them, but Musou games have gradually shifted their development style from massive rosters that largely play the same and are very satisfying in their own guilty pleasure kind of way to something with a bit more substance and depth. I noted this while playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and I was really hoping we'd get the same with Strikers, which we actually did. Each member of the Phantom Thieves plays a bit differently. For example, Ryuji is a tank that can resist being staggered when you activate his ability, and in exchange for that, you can deal out some massive damage without being interrupted. Of course, Joker, like we've seen with previous Persona protagonists, is the wild card, who can use any Persona he desires. Also, Sophie does more damage if you time her attacks out properly. And so every character kind of has this little gimmick attached to them, this little thing there that makes them play a little bit differently. Haru can keep spinning and pounding away and doing massive damage. Yusuke's a complete counter-attacker, and he's so satisfying to play as, so on and so forth. So while each of them can play in the same kind of button inputs where you're using square and triangle, and you're pretty much constantly just alternating between them based off what combos you want to do, what's really notable here are their special abilities and their personas and targeting the weaknesses of enemies. So while at its core it's a simple beat 'em up, there's enough here to keep you engaged and entertained, and that's mostly thanks to the smooth transition of turn-based elements into to action. All-out attacks are here, so when you target enough weaknesses, just like in the turn-based games, you'll perform an all-out attack, doing widespread damage to multiple enemies on screen, and it's just as stylistic as it is in the main games. There are showtimes, so as you do baton passes, which you can perform by targeting weaknesses of enemies, this showtime meter will build up, which will do a large AoE attack that is, you guessed it, extremely stylish. Love these to death. You can also switch out personas, which brings in a Final Fantasy VII Remake element that I did not expect. So in Final Fantasy VII Remake, there's that action turn-based combat, right, where you're playing as Cloud, for example, and you're wanting to pick a new spell, and time will slow down here as you kind of think things out, but everything's still moving around you. Now in Persona 5 Strikers, time just completely stops, but as you're switching out personas, you're looking at the weaknesses that you can target. It has that extra element there where it keeps its tactical nature while still being very interactive and things are happening. So this was one of the best transitions out of everything when it comes from turn-based to action. Now I mentioned bond upgrades. As major story events occur, the bond meter will go up. As you complete different missions, the bond meter will go up. And pretty much the idea here is that your group is getting closer together, okay? They're loving each other even more. So yes, they are becoming closer friends technically. And what's happening is you can unlock a bunch of different passive abilities here. You know, rotating around poles, jumping off cars, blowing them up, so on and so forth. There's leveling up, and certain skills in this game that I did not use in the turn-based games are more useful in action combat. SP consumption is very important to manage here, but not so much as the turn-based games because you can just leave the jail and everyone will regen no problem. And then last but certainly not least is the new addition of cooking. So Joker can get a bunch of ingredients and cook items, and this is great because it can save you a lot of money, so you can spend it on brand new weapons and armor, which by the way have their own assets. I really like that. I hate when games give you new weapons, but the stats are just the only thing that changes. Cooking is a really cool addition that I hope to see in future Persona games in its own way, where you can use it as a substitute for items in dungeons. We've sort of seen that a little bit like in Persona 4 Golden. You can make your own lunch and that type of stuff and bring it to school, but I want to see them continue to build out this element. I thought it fit really well, and so I hope they do more of that. Now, there is one issue I do have with the gameplay, and it's the aliasing. I mean, these character models are abysmal. They look terrible a lot of times. Now, there is a quality mode and there is a frame rate mode which you can use, and that's all fine and dandy, but even on the graphics mode while I was playing in PS5 with back compat, which by the way, there are no next gen upgrades for this game, all the models are just constantly aliasing, which means like there's these jagged edges and it does not look good. It's not going to ruin your experience, but it absolutely is noticeable. It stands out all the time, and so I found this to be very disappointing, and I really hope that they do something about it. Like a next-gen upgrade could clean it up. I will say on graphics mode, it looks a little bit better. Even then, man, it's just like, it stands out like a sore thumb. Like you'll always notice it. Also, once you are done with this game, it took me about 45 hours to complete the whole story and a bunch of the requests in the game. There is end game content, there is replayable content. You can start up the game again on a brand new difficulty. So there is a sense of replayability here, especially with the platinum trophy having one certain grindy element, which is involving maxing out your bond level. I have to say that the new game plus will be appreciated by a lot of people. With that being said, that's generally all there is for gameplay. So let's move into one very fundamental part of Persona as a series. That's sound. So sound here is fantastic. You know, you have the familiar all-out attack sounds that are like that. I don't know how to do the sound. You know what I'm talking about though. But there's that familiarity there, but it feels so good, man. Like it's a great audio feedback. Furthermore, vocal performances. I mean, it's got such a star-studded cast from Jeremy Lee to Matt Mercer, Erica Lindbeck. I mean, the talent here on this Persona game is star-studded. So, of course, that is always going to be phenomenal. These actors and actresses are so great at what they do. They're huge inspirations to me, and they continue to kill it. It's just a testament to how great they are, man. So you could feel that bond growing between the group because I think the cast is becoming more familiar with each other's work, and that stuff is just great, man. And also, kudos to the writers and the directors for making conversations flow properly. Of course, though, most importantly is the music. The music is a complete bop in Persona 5 Strikers. Oh my lord. I mean, the battle music is just... There's so many tracks here that are great. I will say, though, I do think they leaned a bit too heavily into Persona 5, which I know sounds strange. I mean, this may be coming from someone who grinds Persona soundtracks ton. I mean, since they've added them on Spotify, it's all I listen to when I'm writing. I do listen to Persona soundtrack a lot more than the average bear, but with that in mind, I do have to say that I felt like for a lot of the moments, like, oh, they're going to play the tension track here, they're going to play the happy track here, and it just started to kind of water down overall the major tracks that occurred in 5 and 5 Royal, and I thought they could have done to with all the effort they did throughout story segments being fully voiced and all the effort they went to tell this full story, not more of this Muso game where you're just taking out a bunch of enemies, but there's more directed objectives. I gotta say, I was surprised that they lean so heavily on an old soundtrack. Not that that's a bad thing. The soundtrack's incredible. It's one of my favorites of all time. It's just really that I felt like they could have done with some new tracks here to lift those moments. Like Sophie has her own themes and Kichi has his own theme, and those are great. Outside of that, it's a lot of familiar tunes that you'll be listening to, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how crazy you are about Persona soundtrack. So with that, it's time for the verdict. This game is available on PS4, it's available on Switch, and it's available on PC. Like I said, I played it through PS5 backwards compatibility, and I gotta say, if you're a Persona fan, this is a no-brainer. This is 100% worth the pickup. I loved the ending to this game. I thought it was so well thought out. I just think the social commentary, as well as the combat and the smooth transition, nothing about this game felt forced, which a lot of spin-offs do. So I appreciate that. If you're a Persona fan, this is 100% worth your money. Please do pick it up. You will enjoy it. If you're new to the Persona franchise, you already know where I'm going with this. Yeah, go look into Persona 5, go look into Persona 5 Royal. There are a lot of things in this game that I do think you will miss out on if you don't play P5. Is it so much so that it will ruin your game? No, but there are some major characters that can connect to some of the newer characters in unique ways, and it builds the bond of the group, and it really helps things out and invest in me further. And maybe it's just because I'm a big Persona fanboy, I gotta be real with you, but I do think that you might be missing an element there. Your time will not be wasted if you play Persona 5 Royal. Go pick it up, play it, see if you like it. It's very cheap nowadays. You can get it for like $20. And I gotta say, if you dig that, this is an absolutely worthy follow-up, because even if you want more Persona, it's so different in so many ways while also being familiar that it's not going to burn you out. So if you're going from one to the other, you will also enjoy it. So I say this game is good enough to put Persona as a series on your radar. You could definitely get away with just playing it on its own based off some of the new characters and their involvement. But if you want that full, deep immersion, you're going to want to play, of course, P5, or at least look up the character arcs. But God, if you're doing that, why are you watching my videos? Like, why, man? You know that'll bug me. Don't do that. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Persona 5 Strikers. Once again, big thank you to Atlas and Sega for providing this copy so early, allowing me to really think things out. It's not really different from my review process as per usual. I take my notes and everything, and I just think on the game for a couple of hours before I sit down in front of the camera. But just having weeks to do that once I beat the game was awesome. You know, I mean, just having that comfortability that, hey, I don't have to play this game tonight because I had 3 weeks and I didn't have to crunch. That is such a great feeling, man. I mean, I'm just accustomed to the environment of game reviews where you just got to keep playing, and, you know, every night you're hopping back into that game, and it doesn't feel forced. It's just an adjustment. I really have to say, just having those multiple weeks, I cannot emphasize enough how appreciated that is. So thank you to Atlas, thank you to Sega. Even though it's a very different situation where the game has been out in Japan for a while, it's probably why we got it so early. Just once again, that is so appreciated as a content creator, so thank you to them. And with that, I hope you all found this review insightful. Let me know what you think of Persona 5 Strikers in the comments down below, and I'll talk to all of you very soon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons and all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.